unchosen suffering is going to happen, right? So the only thing that you can do is have some chosen suffering to prepare for it.
It's the only thing you can do. That's the only thing you can practice for the unchosen suffering, is have chosen suffering. Do something that sucks every day. I'm not trying to send a message of run 200 miles, be the baddest motherfucker in the world, but be tough. You better have a part about you that's tough, a part about you that can break down situations and get better. And break down situations very quickly within some trauma in your life, some devastation in your life, because it's going to come. The devastation, the trauma is going to come, and you can't allow that to become a Jersey barrier. It can't be a Jersey barrier. It has to be something that you can maneuver through very quickly and move forward. That takes a lot of toughness. There are a lot of people, when you die, they figure out why you died. They figure out how you died in the autopsy. But we never do a live autopsy to figure out why we're dying while we are alive. And I was dying. I was living every day, but I was really dead. And so I figured it out. And once I figured it out, I was able to reborn. I was able to be reborn. You must take this knowledge that you learn from all this shit is knowledge. So I'm just trying to give people that strength to go in the archives of your life. Because while you're probably fucked up, it's probably something happened to you in your life. Go through the archives, dig it up, study it, and then use it for yourself. That's the main purpose for me right now. You need to be better here. You need to be better here. You need to overcome this, overcome that. And people need to have purpose to get up. They need purpose to perform. You need to get to a point in your life where there's nothing on the docket. There's no 5K. There's no, I'm going to get into school to be this or that, and still perform to the highest level. Because what people don't get is one day that thing's going to come up. And if you're not constantly performing without purpose, you're not going to be ready when the time comes. It's this magical thing, purpose, that we're all looking for. But what's funny about it all is that we need these things to perform. But we don't take a second to realize the purpose is always there. The purpose never leaves us, because the very purpose is you. You are always the purpose. There may be another purpose, like being a SEAL or going to college or whatever, but the main purpose in life is you. So if you wake up in the morning and you don't want to do something, you don't care enough about yourself. And that's what you need to really research is, why am I not doing this for myself? Because that is the number one purpose in life, is to better oneself. So that's the only purpose I fucking need. So the reason I get up every day, even though there's no race or there's no school, there's nothing in front of me, is because I have pride in myself.
I'd been carrying around the same lofty goal since 2014. It promised all the physical and psychological demands of special operations and was fueled by the same valorous spirit. But whenever I got close to it, the opportunity slipped through my fingers. I wanted to become a smoke jumper. Smoke jumpers are airborne wildland firefighters. They parachute into the backwoods to put down fires before they become raging infernos and make world news. My pursuit of smoke jumping is the reason I got into wildland firefighting in the first place. After years of frustration, I finally had an opportunity to join a smoke jump recruit in Montana back in 2020. But my knees weren't willing to cooperate. And after my failed surgery in 2021, I could only assume that smoke jumping would remain out of reach. On June 7th, I met with Dr. Gomal in New York. He evaluated the MRI scans and took some x-rays of my bow-legged left leg, and my misalignment shocked him. The degeneration in my knee was more severe than he'd anticipated. I have no idea how you were able to run a mile on those knees, he said, let alone 50, 100, 200 miles. Dr. Gomal knew how far I traveled to come see him, but as much as he wished he could help, I wasn't a viable candidate for a meniscus transplant because my knee was too far gone. He offered up an unloaded brace that might relieve some of my pain, but knew it wasn't much of a solution because nobody wears a bulky brace 24 hours a day, and a brace alone would not give me my life back. There wasn't much left to say. He lingered in silence and absorbed my obvious disappointment. It wasn't simply that I was in pain or couldn't work out. I would also have to swallow the fact that the badass jobs I'd always admired and strived for were no longer for me. He turned to leave, but when he was halfway out the door, he stopped cold and looked back. Hey, try the unloader brace for a couple months, he said. And if it helps, there may be one other option we can discuss. I would appreciate it if we could discuss it right now, I said. I was desperate for any flicker of possibility at that point. Apprehensive, he nodded, sat down across from me again, and explained an uncommon procedure that isn't taught much anymore, known as a high tibial osteotomy, or HTO. It's a surgery that realigns the knee joint to relieve pressure and pain. But to achieve that, he would have to saw into my tibia, open up a 5mm wedge to create a gap in the bone, and then screw in a tapered metal plate to cover the gap, which would eventually be filled in with new bone tissue. By no means is this a slam dunk fix, he said, which is why I hesitate to bring it up. He went on to explain that the outcome had a lot to do with the patient and how determined they are during rehabilitation. But he knew my background and wasn't worried about that. He was reluctant because he knew that both of us could do everything right and my body still might not react well to the procedure. Some knees cannot be helped. And until he was in the operating room, he couldn't say for sure if mine was one of them. Sometimes the surgery falls short of solving the problem. And the last thing we want to do is make things worse. Definitely not, I said. But say the surgery is a success, what would that mean for me? Depending on how long it takes for you to recover, eventually you'd have very few, if any, physical restrictions. I'm in, I said. He looked taken aback. Evidently, most people don't leap at the chance to have him saw into their shin bone. I still think you could try the brace first. You say if this works, I could do anything? I asked. Almost. Everything short of jumping out of planes, I suppose. I paused to digest his statement. At first, it felt like another knife to the gut, but it wasn't definitive. He supposed jumping out of planes would be off limits. But he did not know me. Okay, I said, smiling. No jumping out of planes. But Dr. Gama, you are one of the top guys at the best orthopedic hospital in the United States. And in your professional opinion, you don't see any other options for me? He blushed slightly at my assessment of his skills. He had a humility about him that I appreciated. If you are committed to reclaiming what you've lost, he said, then I think this is the best choice for you, yes. Some will look at those odds and consider resorting to an uncommon, painful surgery without a guaranteed outcome a massive risk. I suppose it boils down to what you can and can't live with. A lot of people can live with a lot of mediocre bullshit. Not only can they live with it, they are actually content in their mediocrity. Well, Merry Christmas to them, but that does not work for me. Oh, I wanted to rest too, but not just yet. If there was a chance in hell that this was going to get me where I needed to go, then it wasn't even a choice at all. Okay then, doctor, I said, break the leg. I had the surgery on June 30 and spent 2 nights in the hospital and another week in a New York City hotel room. How did I feel? Like someone had just sawed into my motherfucking leg. When I attempted to stand, the pain level was a 10 out of 10. The blood would rush to where that plate was screwed in, leaving me wincing and lightheaded. I scuttled around on crutches and had to shower while sitting in a chair. I iced and relied on electronic muscle and bone stimulation several times a day and did some basic physical therapy exercises while lying in bed. My flight home was nothing short of excruciating. Agony rolled through me in waves. I broke into a sweat and was borderline delirious as I thought back to my last meeting in Dr. Gamal's office before we left town. The realignment was a success, he said, smiling and pointing at my latest x-ray. I was no longer bone on bone. Up until that moment, he'd been hesitant to promise too much. I'd managed my expectations too in the last days before surgery. I'd read countless articles, message boards, and forums on HEO recovery, and to say the least, they were not encouraging. Most people took 3 to 6 months to walk normally. One article sang the praises of a runner who defied the expectations of doctors to complete a marathon 18 months after his HEO procedure. For me, he became the gold standard. While running a marathon is no easy feat under any circumstances, it was nothing compared to what I would have to do in order to become a smoke jumper, if that was even still possible. At my age, every lost fire season is a crucial missed opportunity, and I'd had to sit out the last 2. The odds against me were astronomical. But now that Dr. Gamal seemed convinced that I was on a different trajectory, I could not help but conjure scenes of smoke jumper training. The film was grainy and in black and white, but the soundtrack was familiar. It was the brassy hum of Going the Distance, and it played on a loop. How long before I could start training, I asked. While your knee is an issue, the surgery side is. That will take some time to heal, but in a few weeks, You can probably go for a little spin on an exercise bike. A little spin, he said. I got through the rest of that flight with visualization. I saw myself wobble to a stationary bike on those damn crutches. I watched the wheels turn and puddles of sweat gather beneath the crank as I spun for hours. On July 15, just over 2 weeks after my surgery, that vision became reality. I could barely get my leg over the seat and didn't channel much power into the pedals. Anytime the leg hung loose, it would throb, as if the plate itself came with its own beating heart. Each pedal stroke was another fuck you. It was so painful I couldn't help wondering why the fuck I was putting myself through it. I lasted 30 minutes. That doesn't sound like much, but it was a monumental first step. The question now became, can I dial it up? Almost nothing in life is constant. Conditions and circumstances are perpetually in flux, like the winds and the tide, which is why my mind is never fixed. I tack and adjust, forever searching for my new 100%. Age, health, and the responsibilities we carry can be limiting. That doesn't mean we should give in to those limitations or use them as excuses to let ourselves or our dreams go, but we can acknowledge them as long as we are committed to finding out what we can still do, given those limits, whether they be temporary or indefinite, and maximizing that. When most people undergo major surgery, they relax into the recovery time the doctor lays out. They accept their 6 to 8 week vacation from the grind or their 6 to 12 months of leave. Before I was discharged from HSS in New York, I wanted to know precisely when I could get back into the gym and how hard I could push it. This felt like my last shot, and the stakes were too high to rely on a professional physical therapist. I know my body better than anyone and didn't want any naysayers in the foxhole. The fate of my recovery and my future would be on me, and that kept me thinking proactively. Every day, thousands of people wake up to a life defined by newfound limitations that are difficult to accept. Maybe they've been diagnosed with a terminal disease or suffered a spinal injury. Could be they lost a limb or are suffering from PTSD. More often, the shifting circumstances are not nearly so dire. Sometimes it's good news that changes the equation. Maybe you are a new parent or landed a lucrative gig that demands 10 to 12-hour workdays. Could be you recently got married, which means you have to consider more than just your own goals. No matter the variables, your new 100% is out there waiting for you to find it. The thing is, most people don't want to, because whenever you're trying to find your new anything, it means you're not who you used to be, and that can be depressing enough to give up the search. Some people use their new circumstances to dial down their effort level instead of adjusting their approach and still giving it their all to achieve their goals. You've got to work with what you have. I couldn't run or run, but that didn't mean I was out of the fight. No matter what you are dealing with, your goal should be to maximize the resources and capabilities you do have. If you've suffered a freak injury or received a diagnosis that changes everything, what does your new maximum effort level look like? A lot of people bide their time and wait to see what happens next, but a year or two later, they find they are still waiting. With every unfortunate turn in life, no matter how heavy the weight, you have to be committed to pushing back against that pressure with effort. No matter your age, abilities, disabilities, or responsibilities, we must all stay committed to finding our new benchmarks. Because not only does that keep your mind engaged and your demons at bay, you actually might achieve things the old you never could have conceived.